lied about everything. All right, everything's a lie. All that you were taught was a lie. Okay, I'm gonna prove it with this article right here, and I'm gonna cross-reference it with the time period of the first slaves. They came to Virginia, and this um, Transportation Act. Right. Okay, let's get to it. Convict labor during the colonial period. In 1615, English courts began to send convicts to the colonies as a way of alleviating England's large criminal population. This practice was unpopular in the colonies. By 1697, colonial ports refused to accept convicts. In response, Parliament passed a Transportation Act of 1718 to create a more systematic way to export convicts. Okay, check this out. 1615, right? When they say the first set of slaves come to Virginia, let's check it out. Slavery in Virginia dates to 1619, soon after the founding of Virginia as an English colony by the London Virginia Company. So, if you realize, you say 1619 was the first slaves. Now, when you check this out over here, they were already sending convict laborers way before, well, 4 years before 1619. Okay, they've been sending people over here since that during before that so called time. All right, so recording. Yeah, so watch check this out. After the passes Transportation Act, right, in 1718, to create a more systematic way to export convicts instead of relying on merchants to make arrangements on their own to ship felons to the colonies. On their own to ship felons to the colonies, the British government subsidized the shipment of convicts through a network of merchants, giving a contract for the service to one individual at a time. Between 1700 and 1775, approximately see 52,200 convicts sailed are the colonies, and more than 20,000 of them to Virginia. Now, people, now check this out, right? These are the convicts they were sending from Europe over here, and they started at 1615. Now, who are these people they sent to Virginia in 1619? I'll wait. I'll wait. I'll wait. They claim that they were Africans, right? But over here it's saying 1615 they sent people from England. So I guess what they did was just switch the narrative. You know what I mean? Switch it up to fit the African narrative. If you know what I'm saying? And even so, they are Africans, but anyway, these Europeans, because Europe and Africa is on the same, they're on the same landmass. You know what I'm saying? So it could be that they were sending these could be the exiles, but also, but they say convicts. So obviously it was their convicts they were sending. And what you gotta know, what you gotta realize too, during this time you had the Cromwell Wars. And the Cromwell Wars, I think his name was Oliver Cromwell. He was already kicking the original Europeans out of England and Ireland and all these places. But nevertheless, when you do the comparison, you do the cross reference, you're gonna realize that this whole narrative they created it for um the curriculum. You know what I mean? For the teachers' colleges to miseducate the people, right? Take their mind off the land. So I'm gonna go dig further into this right here. So check this out, right? Between 1615 and 1699, English courts sent approximately 2,300 convicts to American colonies. In the 1700s, prior to the end of the practice in 1776, another, look, 1776, right? Right? And when they have the first so-called census, 1790, right? So this was approximately say uh like 24 years prior to census, right? So all these people that were shipping from Europe during the so-called transatlantic slave trade, right? How come you never heard of this? Hmm? How come you never heard of all this stuff going on? This these convicts coming away from Europe. Hmm? How come they trying to always fit the African narrative, but they never talk about the Europeans coming over here as convicts? Another 52,200 or more arrived, only about 30% of the number of white indentured servants and less than 20% of the number of enslaved Africans went to the colonies at the same time. Now, check this out. They say that Africans came in 1619 and they were the first, right? This is where they get messed up. This is where they're screwed up at. 1619 was the first so-called Africans, right? But prior to 1619, they're already sending European convicts over here. So what are you talking about? Really? What are you trying to say? So you gotta pay attention to the context, man, of how they put it. You know what I mean? Because their narrative is always just make it seem like so-called Africans or dark-skinned people are the ones who were mostly enslaved. Hmm? That's their narrative. Because they gotta let it fit their narrative. You know what I'm saying? So they switch places, man. 80% of transport convicts were sent to Maryland and Virginia. Approximately 41,760 convicts sent to those two colonies. Virginia received a little less than half, about 20,000 felons. Prior to the Transportation Act of 1718, the shipment of convicts to the colonies had been conducted in a haphazard way by merchants who received them from the courts or by the convicts themselves. King James the First, right? King James. Who's King James? King James wrote your Bible, right? King James wrote uh the Bible, King James Version Bible, right? That was a that was like a, as I said, a trust indenture, okay, to create the colony of Virginia. That was like a charter. That Bible was a charter, okay. He already gave patents to the colonizers to come over here to cut the land up. And don't get it twisted, King James wasn't looking like this, all right. King James was a swarty, okay. uh, had begun process in 1615 by authorizing the transportation of convicts who could yield a profit service to the Commonwealth in parts abroad, where it is found fit to employ them. Check this out. Look how they spell employ. Imploie. Employ them. By 1634, perhaps as many as 60 convicts had been sent to the colonies. Right? 1697, the process had ceased to function because the colonies were refusing to take convicts, and there was a dearth of merchants willing to pay to ship felons to America. So you already have merchants paying, willing to pay for the felons, okay? Right? From England. An intervening war and the 1715 Scottish Rebellion prevented an immediate solution to the convict problem. But by 1718, those destructions had ceased. At the same time, the English penal system was in such a state of flux that a new solution had to be found for increasing numbers of felons overrunning London. The English people were exceedingly conscious of their rights and reluctant to warehouse criminals for long periods of hard labor like slaves. They also feared giving the state so much poorer that their freedoms could be threatened. Moreover, city jails were so unhealthy that many inmates died from disease or starvation. The localities also lacked sufficient funds to care for convicts, and the growth of population centers meant that the old public punishment of whipping, brandings, and the pillory no longer had the effect of shaming criminals into reforming their behavior. Rather than spending money for more jails, Parliament decided to make a great financial commitment and underwrite a systematic approach to transporting non-capital felons to the colonies, which resulted in 1718 Act. Over the previous 20 years, government revenues had grown to a point where such an act had become feasible. So it was profitable for them to send their subjects, their convicts over here. So now, if it's profitable, why would you want to go spend more money to get so-called African slaves when you can use your own people to ship over here for nothing? They're cheap. So as a businessman, I would choose to go the cheaper route so I could make yield a bigger profit, right? Come on, people, you gotta think now. And I'm just debunking the whole so-called history of Virginia 1619 slavery. Okay? That's all I'm here doing. Debunking this African bullshit. Right? They always want to tell you about Africa indentured slaves. See? Through the history of blacks in Virginia beginning in 1619, the transition of status from indentured servant to lifelong slave was a gradual process. Some historians believe that some of the first black who arrived in Virginia were already slaves. They were certainly enslaved. Others state that such individuals were taken into colony as indentured servants. Historians generally believe that officially slavery in English colonies in North America did not begin as an institution until 1660. A slavery law was passed in 1641 in Massachusetts, but not until 1661 in Virginia. So, the question is, who was these black people? I get who was these black people, man. Black people was these convicts coming from Europe, man. Those were your black people, man. Okay? They traded places with us, man. They switched places, man. That's what I've been telling you. You gotta wake up and smell the coffee. It's right in front of your face. I'm showing you right now. Okay? So, I'm telling you, it was more feasible, right? And to go to Africa to get slaves. While England's population had grown from less than 3 million in 1500 to more than 5 million by 1650, a similar rise in employment opportunities for poorer elements of society did not occur. Moreover, wages did not match the cost of living expenses, so that between 1/4 and 1/2 of the population subsisted in poverty, leaving many of them little alternative but turning to pilferage and thieving and other nudeness. Thus, many of those arrested for crimes were guilty of trivial offenses that today would be considered petty larceny or shoplifting and would be punished by a warning. A small fine or probation, for example, stealing some small food item or a handkerchief worth less than a shilling. By 1769, however, the English Penal Code, this criminal act, could lead to transportation had grown in 1690. So they send their throwaways over here. All right. So people, you gotta wake up. Okay. These black slaves were these throwaways from England. Okay. I rest my case. Peace out.